like we both need our own private jets with how much traveling we've been doing. I normally don't travel as much as you, Dr. Eloise, but I did a 12-day road trip, not international. So I think you still have me beat, but I did Nashville for 7 days for Jamf, which is um, a system management solution for Mac users. And they had their big user conference. So it's the largest Mac user conference in the world. And then I flew from Nashville, which was my first time in Nashville. So I'll have to share about some of my learnings, but I love country music and it's a good thing because country music is everywhere. And then I flew after the conference was over to Palm Springs to attend the fall SIG conference. And it was 110, 120 degrees in Palm Springs.
Ugh.
It was crazy hot, which I actually think benefited SIG because people were wanting to spend so much time indoors, which I think
Mm.
actually helped with the vibe and the networking. So as crazy as that seems, I actually think it worked in their favor. So you're still on the road, but you went to DPW, which I did not even join the live stream. I was too busy at SIG, just networking and facilitating workshops and moderating a panel. So I did not even experience it. So I think it would be a good time and interesting to our listeners to have you kind of talk through and share about your DPW experience, given every other feed on LinkedIn right now is about DPW.
It really is, boy, howdy. Um, yeah, so I am still out, as you said. I'm in Ireland preparing to speak at British Telecom Source or BT Sourced. They're doing a digital native uh, workshop or series of workshops, all things digital procurement this week. So I spent the weekend in I went from Amsterdam to Dublin. That's it's also late here when we're recording, so which is why I'm like half ready for bed. No makeup, my hair is a mess, but. I just want to give a shout out to our lovely friend of the show, Michelle Armstrong, who took me all around Dublin yesterday, and I had no idea how just amazing, beautiful we want. She nearly tried to kill me by taking me on a 4.5 mile hike. So we have to return the favor when she comes to the Bay Area next.
We maybe need to up our hiking game and find a more uphill hike for her.
Oh my God! Like, yeah, I think and then she spent the whole day with me, and then she went home and then like went jogging. So it's like, oh my God. So. But I have this great little Johnny Fox's sweatshirt that she bought me, which is one of, I don't know if it's the oldest pub in Ireland, but it's or in Dublin, but it's a well-known marker. So I'm representing Dublin tonight.
Love that. So we'll dive into DPW. If there's time, I want to talk a little bit about SIG. If not, we'll do that on the next episode. But I just think with all the hype and things I'm seeing about DPW, and since I wasn't there, I'm selfishly um, voting that we talk about it today. And then I have had a few people message and give me feedback, which I'll share as well, because I'd love your take on some of it. So maybe start from the very beginning. I guess you call it the pre-day. Technically,
Yeah.
DPW is a 1 day conference, but there was a
Oh, two,
pre-day.
actually, it's a 2-day conference with a third day, which is
Okay.
pre.
Okay. So let's start with so it's 3 days. Let's start with day one.
So so day one or the pre-day is is what they call official side events or official DPW official side events or something like that. And this year was the ones that I was familiar with. I don't know if there's more than two, but Hicks had one. They had Supplier Experience Live, and Oro had one. I forget what the name of theirs was. And they started at about noon and went to 5, and then there were drinks afterwards. So I did the opening keynote for Hicks's, and then I had like an hour and a half to traipse my way. It wasn't that far. It was only like 10 minutes uh, over to the Oro one, and I did the closing keynote there. Of course, I have
So,
to admit, I
so
don't.
you're jumping back and forth. You're cross pollinating.
Oh my God, yeah. And some of the content was the same, but I had a little bit different just in case anybody was in both. But I was talking about very, new content or sort of top of mind stuff with regard to people. I have to admit this. I don't know why I have to admit this, but as I was leaving the Hicks one, I got coffee and a couple vegan treats, and then I was crossing the main road in Amsterdam, or the main road down there in central Amsterdam. And as I was getting to the curb on the other side, there was a lot, like there was several curbs I had to do. I tripped and fell and like ripped my knees and ripped my stockings and got coffee all over myself, and it was a hot mess. But so the
And
hour and a
you
half
and
I
you normally map everything out. You're the planner of planners, right? You walk before you speak, and I guess you can't control what happens on the streets.
No, you cannot do that. And that was just one of those things that my knees hurt so badly. One was all scraped up, so I had to stop and get band-aids or plasters, as they call it over here. And I had to change, and I was going to change my topper anyway. But yeah, so that was unexpected, and then I had to get another coffee, and so my hour and a half got compressed down to a very short time. So I was arriving at the Euro event just as they were texting me, like, "You're going to come, right? You're going to be here, right?" So that was kind of hairy. Both events were well attended. I think both had a capacity or planning for a capacity of about 100 and 125. Both had that. Both,
And then what was the format for these pre-events? Was it heavily content focused,
yeah.
like presenters coming in and speaking throughout the 4 or 5 hours?
Yeah, exactly. So I spoke, and then after at the Hicks one, I spoke, and then there was a panel on sustainability. Alex Tamra from Kenview talked, and Oliver, I forget, I forget where he's from, but uh, anyway, there was and then there was one. I know that after that one, there was one J&J spoke, and a few others, and then just content throughout the rest of the afternoon. It closed with Costas, the founder of Hicks, talking. Of course, I missed all of that, but then the Oro one was similar in that Jason Bush did the opening keynote, and then there were several panels. When I walked in, finally, there was a panel with Roche, Grunthal, and some other client talking about their journeys. I guess the panel before that one had a couple other clients talking about their journeys in adopting intake, adopting Oro, just sort of working through it. And then I came in and closed out with talking about people again.
Do we have any idea for our sell side folks that listen to the podcast how much they paid? I'm assuming these were a pretty penny to host.
I don't know, but I I I I would recommend doing this. Boy, this was just I mean, the vibe in both of them was just it was palpable, and especially the Euro one, because I closed out the end, and people were really excited by the time that the day was done. And then there was drinks at the hotel right where where their event was, and people were just buzzing. They had rented out the whole bar, and it was actually really nice. And I guarantee you, they got more. At least as an observer, it looked like they got so much out, both companies out of, because I saw Hicks had lunch before the event kicked off, and the it was clear to me that was money well spent.
Yeah. Yeah. If I had to, again, I've not attended DPW. I was supposed to go and then COVID happened and I didn't make it to Amsterdam. But My guess is that's in the 50 to $75,000 range if you're gonna host basically your own mini conference, right, before
Mhm.
piggybacking on their major conference. And it's almost sounds like a partial cab where a customer advisory
Yeah,
board where you have customers coming in and interacting with prospects and
yeah,
basically selling on your behalf and then speaking and telling their success stories and struggles. I mean, doing implementations, no matter what it is, never go perfectly. So but it sounds like it's kind of like a combination of a customer advisory board and a mini summit where you've got customers selling on your behalf, which is incredibly powerful.
absolutely. And then you bound it with like Jason and myself, and it really creates some excitement and some momentum. So it helps DBW because everybody that attends the first day or the side events comes in with some momentum in addition to all the other
Yeah.
organic momentum coming in. So it was I have to say I love those that first day, and just helps you get warmed up, and I find it satisfying and also helpful.
Okay. So that was we'll call that day one, AKA the pre day. And so if there was, let's say, 150 in each, that's about 300 people that were involved in the pre-day. And then was there anything at night for all of the attendees, like some sort of opening welcome reception?
Huge opening party. And by the way, they're also on the pre-day. I think it was the pre-day, but there was like a pickleball tournament of some variety. I didn't even find out about it till later. I don't play pickleball, but so I don't even know the details. But there are pictures of it, and like somebody will hopefully comment on that. So that was also going on, but the Tuesday night, the day, well, the day zero or day one, whatever you want to call it, there's an opening party, and it is like I saw the pictures. It's off the charts. I don't do big parties, as anybody knows that I'm an introvert, so I can't speak to it. But everybody that I talked to thought it was amazing. Yeah, and so this is a little bit of a conference tip, I guess. I don't know. Monday night, before anything kicked off, I had dinner with friend of the show, Kathy Mercani, and that was wonderful. And then I had dinner Tuesday night while everybody was partying. I had dinner with a friend who's in the community, uh, and friend of the show, also Vanya Petrovic, and by the way, I apologize for mispronouncing or Americanizing her name. But anyway, we'll hear more from her in future episodes because, as we'll talk, I interviewed her while I was there.
Which is so awesome. I love boots on the ground interviews where things aren't pre-planned. Kind of like our whole show where we just show up and talk about what's on our mind. But I like that verse, things being overly scripted.
Yes.
So for the so pre-day, we had so the big kickoff party. I will just say from being a marketer, I think one of the most powerful things you can do if you are doing events is to create unique experiences. Create memorable experiences that people will think about ongoing. So it sounds like one of the reasons why DPW has been so successful is they have figured out how to create unique and memorable experiences that people talk about for years and years later. So that's just a marketing tip for anybody who's listening to the show that's on the go to market side. Really, really important if you're going to start doing your own events or involved in event planning.
Yeah, and I mean everything about DBW is memorable. And I was looking through, they to all the attendees, they sent all the pictures today, or maybe Friday. I don't know. All the days are blurring together, but the photos of everything is just like somebody coined the term Disneyland for procurement, and it's just like it is. Every picture just conveys this feeling of cool, of fun, of this vibe, this techno vibe. It just comes through in every picture. It's truly amazing.
Okay. So day two was, we'll call it the first formal day of the conference. So, first formal kickoff. Again, I know this was live streamed. I'd be curious to talk to someone who participated via the live stream. I was not able to because I was at SIG, but that would be a unique perspective. I think that's a really smart idea. Again, for folks listening who are trying to really figure out how to host events that impact pipeline and impact revenue, if you have a large enough event and you can allow folks to join and log in remotely, that gets people, I feel like, more excited and even more interested in attending the event the following year in person.
Absolutely. And last year when I did my book launch and having that live stream, a lot of people did watch, at least they gave me feedback that they watched my live stream. So as a presenter, I can tell you that people, quite a number of people watched and then actually commented. So that was really cool.
Okay. So kickoff, tell me about the morning. I'm assuming there was some big keynote, some sort of entertainment speaker that was involved. Typically that's the format.
So this is the part where I have to admit that I missed a lot of the sessions.
Okay.
So like this is a good news, bad news kind of thing. So first off, I got there right on time. Well, which is on time is late, as everybody knows. So there were so many people that it wasn't standing room only. It was like out the door. You couldn't get in the door standing room. So I was one of the people that couldn't get in. So I don't know how the keynote went, but again, what I heard and what I saw, it was that it was really great. There's what they do. There apparently there was a choir, and Mateus kicks it off. He's the founder, and they had other keynote speakers, and it's very much a production, gets people really excited. But also there were two expo halls, and I walked around the expo halls, and as it turns out, like I I talked and talked and talked to people like nonstop, and it was just hour after hour of just running into people, taking selfies, and
So you
so
said, so two expo halls. Does that mean they broke it up, startups in one section and then larger, more established suppliers in another?
well, it's all startups, just different phases of startups. Now there's a few folks like GEP and Accenture, and I think Zycus or yeah, so, but there was nothing special, but it had to do, I think, with the size of the sponsorship. By the way, sidebar, the 2025 sponsorships are already sold out. Like like that's crazy.
Wait,
So
so the last day, I'm assuming, of the conference, they released their sponsorship packages and they
yeah,
sold out that day.
yeah. So I don't know if it was all of them because they had over 100 sponsors. So whatever it was, like sold out instantly. Like everybody's already fully committed to next year. So I mean, just crazy.
Again,
Um,
create a unique experience that
I'm
people, that's
telling you.
unforgettable and memorable, and that's what happens.
Yeah. So I mean, and people are like, you can also buy tickets now and for an early bird discount, and people are buying those as well. So I don't know all the details because like my brain was kind of like muddled by the end, and I didn't think to ask some of these questions. But yeah, it's amazing.
So I pinged some friends that went, and to ask about specifically the exhibit hall,
Yep.
and one of them said the smaller organizations, so in my mind that's pre-seed, seed A, right? The
Yep.
smaller groups that were there struggled to get leads from the event and struggled to stand out. Do you feel that that's something that resonates? Did you notice that?
I think to some degree, I think that's true. They had this, so in the one expo hall, I don't know how it was designed, I just walked around aimlessly. One, well, it was certainly the bigger startups and bigger booths and sort of more separation, like more separation between them all. So that was so what was nice about that is there was free flow movement, and you didn't feel like everybody was on top of each other, because that has happened in the past, because you get a mass of humanity in the narrow pathways. It's hard to move or do
Yeah.
anything. So they solved the traffic flow problem, which was great. In the other expo hall, there was more, some of the big ones, but then what we called startup row, which was like 4 rows, if more traditional, just booths next to one another.
Like a turnkey kiosk?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so like you might have 6 kiosks or 8 kiosks on one side and eight
Yeah.
kiosks on another, and then another row, and then another row, and another row. So I suspect folks that were smaller that were in those places ran into that problem a fair amount.
Yeah, and again, I don't know, I don't have the prospectus, so I don't know what the price point difference is, but I'm assuming it was pretty significant cost to get
Yeah.
a larger space, and so if I'm a pre-seed or a Series A, I'm not gonna have the budget, and nor does it potentially make sense to invest so much, especially if it's your first time and you're feeling it out.
Yeah, and I would say now, I think it's worth further research as the days and weeks pass here, but as an observer, what the booths on Startup Row costs, I think it was a couple grand. I think that's actually a really good deal, depending,
Yeah.
because it gets you in the building, it gets you visibility, you get to speak at the startup things, whatever it was, like 2, 3, 4, or 5 grand. I can't remember, but, or actually, I'm not even sure I know. But to me, that's a very small price to pay to be in the building and getting your message out there
Well,
as a
and you get 1 or 2 passes, so that alone,
right.
right? You're just to go buy your own pass, so if they are providing discounted pricing to smaller brands, I like that a lot, because I think it's really hard if you're a startup to afford to be able to even attend or be present at events like this.
Exactly. So I think if you were to ask this pre-seed seed A group, they would probably say it was great exposure. I think like a friend of the show, Conrad, he was in Startup Row, which was surprising to me, and because last year he had a really cool spot doing cool things. So like I could see that was probably not a good a good thing for graphite, but certainly so another friend of the show, Daniela, the founder of Flupify. I went to her booth, and she it was a good, it seemed like a really good experience for her, and she was getting exposure. So.
And then what about, so one of the things that I think is baffling to me in the States is there's no one that does direct conferences well, at least none that I've ever attended.
Or
Most
direct materials.
direct materials,
Yes.
yep, companies that
Yeah.
are heavily focused in the manufacturing space. Every conference that I've personally attended is heavily focused on the indirect side in the US. So I'm wondering, did DPW have a bigger focus and priority on the direct?
This is so funny because uh yeah, so the really, and I was talking to uh Spencer, the founder of
Light source?
Light Source. Yeah, thank you. And he was pretty much the only direct material. Like there's
Oh,
another company, Valdera, that focuses on chemicals, and like there's a few folks you could argue fit within direct, but the thrust of your question is very much like, were there a bunch of Spencer's competitors? And no, there weren't. It's heavily indirect, and or it's focused on broader platforms, but not, no is the answer. So
so do you think that is intentional, that
no.
DPW as an organization is trying to push indirect?
No, I don't think that's, I think that's a reflection of the market. When you look through all the different providers in the directs, I mean, like even my spider chart is way over indexed on indirects or platforms or capabilities, but it's not like there's not a ton of direct material stuff. So yeah.
And I wonder, again, maybe this would be interesting for another show. Is it because direct folks don't get out as much? Like if I'm on the direct side, I feel like I'm more established. I've got my processes, I've got my systems. I'm not investing heavily in going out and networking and going to conferences, which then would mean suppliers aren't going to go out and spend money to go to events if the direct buyers aren't there. Like, I wonder why that is. Why are we not seeing direct buyers out in the public as much and out at events? Same thing with SIG. I would say 99.9% of their attendees were indirect.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's where the innovation is. I do think the directs people do make their way to the Gartner supply chain or the more quote unquote traditional supply chain conferences. But also, it's not like there's a ton of direct material startups trying to disrupt because really you'd have to like the startups are going to, well, if you think about directs, the cycle times are much different because you're doing the sourcing when you're doing the product engineering, the development,
Well,
the
you should
NPI.
be.
Yeah,
This does
yeah,
not always happen. You should
right. Well,
be involved from the inception of the product development and creation. That does not always happen.
well, right, but the contracts are often established at that point, whether or not you're getting good pricing, and there's a little bit of a shell game that goes on in direct material sourcing of, okay, you're going to pay $100 in year one, and then $80 in year two, and $60 in year three, and 50 in year three. And it looks like we've negotiated those savings down when in reality it only costs the supplier $10. So they're happy to take the whatever the $90 profit in year one and two. And so also I think the maturity of direct material sourcing folks is
Yeah.
not the same. It's definitely not the same as indirects.
Yep. All right. Well, I don't want to derail the whole conversation today, but it's something that just always stands out to me because in my past role, we were on the direct side selling into mid-market manufacturers, and it's something that just I is very noticeable to me when I go to a
Yeah, yeah, and I think that you're starting to see so companies like Diderot is a brand new one. They were there but not exhibiting, and they're developing their solution for mid-market manufacturing. At least that's where they're starting. And and I'll say even Zip got they're predominantly indirect too, but they started focusing on mid-market. So I think we will probably see more mid-market solutions come out. And as we do, we'll see more of a concentration on directs.
Interesting. All right. So day two, you didn't go to the closing party. You went to dinner instead, but it sounds like you heard there was quite an event, quite a production.
So day two,
First
or
full day.
sorry, the first full day of the conference, um, there was no formal DPW event in the
Okay.
evening. All the vendors had their uh, like Oro had a dinner, Carney had a drinks, and then Akira Labs had a dinner. Pactum had a dinner.
Okay.
I think Coupa had a dinner. I don't know. So everybody just kind of goes to their own individual dinners or does their own thing. And I went to the Carney Drinks event and then the Akira Labs dinner, which was actually a ton of fun.
So they allotted time for suppliers to have their own events and networking, which is an important when you're putting on an event. You suppliers pay a lot of money and you would
Yes.
not be having a conference without them. So you need to allot them time to host their own events and have their own networking opportunities. And then day 3, which I guess was technically day 2 of the formal conference. So talk through what was the format and structure for that.
So, and it's also worth noting that there were like four stages. So there's the main stage, big stage, where all the main keynotes. There was a small stage, holds like 50 people, or the audience 50 people. It's called the Sponsors We Love stage. And then there was the startup stage, and I think there was the innovation stage or something. I didn't make my way to all of the stages. Um, it's amazing the amount of things I didn't do, but I can tell you I was there like both days, all day. Like it was exhausting. But on day two, I Carney hosted a presentation on the Sponsors We Love stage, and we were presenting research that we had done on make versus buy, or I should say, give proper credit to Shaquille Nathu, my colleague, who had sponsored this research, done the analysis, and presented this. And he was joined by Allianz's CPO, Valentina Fanny, and the two of them had an amazing discussion about make versus buy in this Gen AI world.
And we talked about this on a previous podcast episode a little bit around, are we seeing a trend in the market? When are we seeing companies looking to build their own solutions in-house versus go out and buy a best in breed or best in class solution?
Yeah, and one of the statistics, and a lot of people were writing about this on LinkedIn. In the survey, it showed of procurement leaders and whatnot showed that 96% of companies intend to build in some degree. So that sent a buzz through the room, through the conference, and now on LinkedIn. So there's a lot to unpack there in sort of future episodes and for the profession.
Yeah, well, I mean, AI is obviously the main driver of that, being able to make it easier for people to build things in-house.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went to that session, so there were multiple sessions running throughout the day.
So, in addition to all the stages, there was an executive track where all the CPOs had the opportunity to attend private briefings. Um, and I did one of the four briefings, and so I spent time with 30 CPOs in a private meeting room, and it was scheduled for 45 minutes, and it went really well. So we went an hour and 15 minutes. In fact, we probably could have kept going, but it was getting to be lunch.
So
So
format is what, they get to ask you anything?
yeah. So the way you could anyway, you want to structure it. I decided to sort of present some new material, and I had brand new material for this group around AI based op models, and a lot of the CPOs I know, and they were there. It was like a graduate course, and where everybody's very comfortable, and everybody, most of the people knew each other, and so there was a lot of camaraderie in the room, and a lot of laughing, and a lot of chiding, and
Like a grad
uh,
school reunion.
totally, it was so much fun. So that's why it went an hour and 15. It could have easily gone 2 hours. I mean, but anyway, I mean, it was just very vibrant discussion. I think everybody that attended got a lot out of it, just even within the exchanges within the group. So, yeah, it was. So that was my highlight, one of the highlights of my conference, and really other than the two keynotes, the really the one presentation I had in DPW proper.
Mhm. Okay. So the CPO tracks, I'm assuming, ran both days and then
Yeah,
depending on.
two on each day. And it wasn't like sometimes you can get in other conferences, you can get the CPOs or the executives tracked off and never see them. DPW doesn't do that. They sort of like, okay, for this well, this 45 minutes or hour and 15, depending on uh, they're going to track off there, but then they're going to come back and be part of
So
the
it's like a session versus removing them
yeah.
from the main conference for a whole day.
exactly. And that way you run into, like, I ran into Paula Martinez, the CPO of Kenvue, right out on the in the middle of the floor. So like like so you have those interactions, because what happens is, well, shall we say, other conferences that shall remain unnamed at the moment, I'll never run into a CPO or an executive because they're just siphoned off and you never see them. And these are my people, the people I know and I enjoy. So yeah, that's a little problematic. Or like I just randomly bumped into Paula. So
Mhm.
I think that's or I ran into Jennifer, the CPO at Google. Like those are the interactions you want with the executives and the people at the conference.
So takeaways for our listeners who weren't at DPW.
Oh, well,
Top
I have to add one more thing. So
Oh,
the other thing that DPW had was a podcast studio set up, and which is highly relevant to us, because what they did is they allowed podcasters to use the studio to interview people. And as I mentioned before, I had a slot on the second day to record, and I recorded with Vanya from Coca-Cola Euro Pacific Partners. Um, and as we Sarah and I discussed in advance, we recorded that, and we'll review it together and play it back on this, and then we'll discuss it and talk about it. So I did that. That was my third thing of that day, and it was a lot of fun and amazing to just be right there in. I mean, like, this is, you and I do this. It's quiet, it's
yeah.
private, but to do it and like be surrounded by chaos was wild. So it was honestly overstimulating for me because that's my brain. But
Was it
yeah,
an was it enclosed room?
no,
Oh, so it
there
was
was a couple
open
partitions, but
space, so you're hearing everything.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Well,
And then like there's a photo box, where you stand in front of the
yeah.
backdrop. Like the photo box was like right to the left of it, so people are getting their picture taken and making funny faces in front of their camera and getting printed. It was a lot going on, but you had to really concentrate.
Well, I will say from a content creator standpoint, I think that's very smart to give all the attendees an opportunity to register or block off time to record. And then think about all the branding that DPW is going to get from that. Every time somebody posts a video or posts a clip or the full podcast that was recorded there, you know that they're going to get a tag and get a shout out.
Oh, for sure. And like Phil Idison from Art of Procurement, he recorded an episode, and I think, yeah, I thought that was one of the most brilliant things that they did. I was happy to be able to record the podcast.
Yeah, so smart again for go to market folks that are listening. If you are doing an event that's large enough scale, think about a way that you can encourage attendees to have an opportunity to create their own content at your event.
Yeah. So my takeaways.
Yeah, so as we close out our episode, I'd love to have you share the positives, like this is what they did that crushed it, nailed it, and then improvements, things that you thought DPW could do better for their next event.
I mean, as always, I mean, a lot of people use the term FOMO. I've seen that a couple times on LinkedIn. And it really does create this sense of FOMO if you are not there. Even when I wasn't in the building, I felt like, well, what am I missing in the building? Who am I missing in the building? So that is real. Because the networking and the camaraderie are top notch. I mean, I don't think I don't think there's any doubt about that. Anybody that attends would agree with that 100%. Um, the other thing I noticed about DPW's crowd is we started. Let me rephrase that. I noticed a lot of young people there, and to be able to draw in a lot of young people who, of course, this conference looked like it spoke to them. They look like they're having fun. I've seen a number of them post online. That was a big thing for just to see a younger audience. And of course, as me as an older person, I'm very attentive to that. But also, the other thing I loved is the mix of senior people. Like I said, there was a bunch of CPOs, more than the 30 that were in the room with me. So having a strong sense of senior leadership, and then next level leadership, a lot of those folks, and then just of course with the younger folks, more junior resources. So to me, having that mix, and I thought also the mix, I will have to see what the numbers end up being, but the mix between vendors and attendees was pretty balanced. I don't know what the numbers, but it didn't feel like all the vendors were the only ones
You
there.
didn't feel cringe that there was like the swarm of suppliers attacking the buy side folks. It was
Exactly, not at all. If anything, it was the attendees, or the buy side attacking the suppliers.
which is they probably don't know what to do with themselves, right? When in
Yeah,
a role reversal.
yeah.
And improvements, anything that you would recommend to Mateus and his team as they're planning for next year?
Well, I have two. One is for me, and I think this will be a topic for a future episode, but I just want to tease it. So one improvement is for me. I look like a complete idiot because I was prepared to give out paper business cards, and absolutely nobody was exchanging paper business cards anymore. Everybody was doing the digital business card thing, and there I looked like a troglodyte, or I think that's the word, but I'm like, so everybody had these fancy apps and stuff, and I just walked away like shaking my head, like, what kind of digital person am I? And
There's
then
it.
my
So we'll have to, yeah, I definitely, we should definitely talk about that. LinkedIn has a really easy way. You can just double click in the search and you can do a quick scan. If you are someone who leverages and uses LinkedIn, that's an easy workaround.
Yeah, and Daniela from Clubify actually had done a video. Actually, this was smart marketing. She did a video of like, hey, here's your little
Yeah.
tip going into DPW, and that got a ton of hits on that. And then the only other thing is as I sort of mentioned, I'll call it the crowd management, because showing up right on time and not being able to get in, and I wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
And actually, I already, Mateus and I were talking about that, and he already said that he's going to start to address that. His brain was already working, but there was also a women's networking event, and that also had a similar problem because there were so many women that wanted to get in. And actually, from my session, even with the executives, it was they had to turn people away. So I think when you turn people away, I think that's very much an even better if, because when you have to turn people away, it just sort of like, yeah. So
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, for folks who attended DPW that listened to this episode, would love to have you drop a note in the comments to share your takeaways or learnings from the conference, and anything that you loved about it, or any recommendations that you have for them in future years. I think in one of our upcoming episodes, I will talk through and share my experience about SIG, which happened the exact same week as DPW. So wasn't able to be at both, and I was speaking and representing UMNITSA and ITAM at SIG. So I prioritized that event this year, but very different type of conference and very different type of event than DPW. So happy to do a deep dive maybe in one of our next shows.
and I would just say there's probably more to. I'm sure I've forgotten like half the things, but there'll be more to unpack, and especially as people react or we read more and more
Yeah.
stuff online.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we will be back next Wednesday morning. Not sure where Dr. Eloise and I will be in the world when we're recording, but we will have our next episode come out on Wednesday.
Thank you.